Hello, good evening everyone. So in the previous class we started our discussion about post-Mauryan age, and before we are basically talking about a time period between Mauryas and Guptas. I will discuss about Gupta Empire in the next class, but in today's class I am going to continue what we started in the yesterday's class about Satavahanas. So we discussed that in the post-Mauryan age there are many developments in terms of, let's say for example, society or religion, but I was mainly focusing on the political development, and from political development we are talking about other aspects. So in political development we discussed that you have 4 sets of invasions from the northwest frontier: Greek, Shakas, Parthians, Kushans. Then in Deccan region you have another very powerful empire, now Satvahana kingdom or Satvahana empire it can be called. And in south you had Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, which we will discuss in today's class. But we mainly are talking about almost same time period, a period of about, let's say 200 BC to 300 AD, a period of about 500 years. And in this period we are discussing developments in the northwest frontier, in the Deccan region and in southern part of the country. So we had completed our discussion in the northwest frontier region, and we had started our discussion in the Deccan part of the country. So this, by the way, I always think that if you can pinpoint a particular name or particular group of people on map, right, and if you can correlate with other developments in other part of the country, remembering historical events become very easy. Because I'm very sure that if, let's say for example, those of you who haven't enjoyed history a lot, but because of UPSC mein hai to padhna hi padega, koi option nahi hai, but who haven't enjoyed history as such. So one very simple way, first ek to ek attitude ka part hota hai ki you have to change your attitude, in the sense that you have to fake it that you actually like history. That is, in general it works a lot, that you have to believe that you like history, you like reading history. So, and you will realize that in the course of time you will actually start enjoying it. Ye human nature works in mysterious ways. This is one of the proven things. So आप history एक तो enjoy करना, पहले खुद को pretend करो. If you do not enjoy it, then at least pretend it that you are enjoying it. Read it like a history, read it like a story, and gradually I'm very sure that you are going to like this discipline. So one problem which in any case all of us face is that how to have all these timelines, all of these things happening together, how to recollect all this information. So in modern history it will become perhaps more difficult, but in ancient or medieval, even though we are talking about a larger time period, I think it is easier, because you do not have to remember the exact year. There are very few cases where you have to remember the exact year. Most of the time, even knowing about century and which part of the century, that should be enough. And also try to place a major development on the map of India. So there should be a ready-made map in your mind. I do not have to show that map. There should be a ready-made map in your mind, that if I'm talking about a particular set of events, then can you pinpoint those set of events on map, that where exactly they may be happening. You do not have to know the exact location. That is for history optional. But for GS perspective, even if you can, let's say for example, you know that in northwest, east, west, south India, wherever it is happening, and then timeline that in which century it is happening. So the events which we talked about in the previous class, we mainly are talking about events from about 200 BC to 300 AD. Right? Try to simplify it. Try to make as simple as possible. First think in terms of century, that is century mein major events kya ho rahe. Then do next level analysis. But पहले जो century level पे clarity same होना चाहिए. So in ancient history we still are trying to find out that what is actually happening. Why question तो बाद में आता है, that why something happened. But what is happening ये भी बहुत मुश्किल है ancient history में, because again remember lack of sources. Anyways, so we are talking about Satavahanas. Satavahanas, we have a lot of information about them from their inscriptions. We have information about their administration, about economy, what type of social organization they thought there should be. So all of those things we are going to discuss. In yesterday's class, I told you that we discussed about Gautamiputra Shatkarni. Gautamiputra Shatkarni, who is considered as the greatest ruler, in the sense greatest conqueror, that Satavahanas have this regular conflict with Western Kshatraps, which are nothing but a branch of Shaka rulers. And Shakas and Satavahanas are fighting a lot of war. They fought a lot of battles, And Gautamiputra Shatkarni was able to recover lot of territory from Shakas by defeating a ruler called Nahapanna. Discuss किया था हमने. ये जो Nahapanna का जो story है, this is especially interesting. Remember that because this is one instance where coinage is telling you that one king has won the battle over another king. And from coinage we know that because the restructuring of coins, that initially these coins were issued by Nahapanna, silver coins which were issued by almost 800 silver coins have been recovered, that they were issued by Nahapanna, and later you find evidence that they have been restruck and now they are being issued with the name of Gautamiputra Shatkarni. So the restructuring hai, that traces its identity, that we know that this restructuring has occurred. So that does signify a political conflict, and then looting basically treasury and issuing the same coins in your name. So this is one of those instances. Give the heading, significance of Satvahana rule. Hanji. क्या अभी इसके बाद जो जस्ट नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है वो मेगालिथिक एज ही है. लेट मी कंप्लीट सतवाहना और उसके बाद जो नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है वो मेगालिथिक एज है. ठीक है, डोंट वरी. तो अभी वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट developments in southern part of the country in detail. That is today's major topic. We will mainly talk about Sangam age, जो पूरा Sangam age हम जिसको बोलते हैं, and even before Sangam age, megalithic age. So in terms of significance, let's say for example, let's divide that into few parts. There is a question that do we know details of administration of Shakas or Kushanas? We have some details, but frankly not a lot of details because sources are numismatics. There are very few sources available there. Buddhist texts. So we do not have lot of information about their administrative setup except this concept of satrapi system, that you had satrap or chhatrap, that there is an empire which is divided into many provinces. Those provinces are ruled by chhatraps. Many of those chhatraps were princes in fact. In some cases you find that there are two rulers. That one region is being ruled by two rulers. And historians believe that it may have occurred to train a new prince, that there is a king and then there is a prince. So two rulers basically signify that prince is being trained to become the next ruler. So here and there you find some information, but overall we do not find lot of information in terms of administration in case of this four set of invasions. Anyways, give this heading. We are talking about Satvahana Empire and their significance. So let's start with the very first in society itself. In society, what type of social setup we are talking about? So few things which are very clear from this time of rule, that Satvahanas considered themselves to be Brahmins. That does tell you that Vedic ideas are not just spread but quite established now in the Deccan region of the country. Again, remember we are talking about a time period of more than 1000 years have passed from the early Vedic age. So lot of migration has occurred throughout the country. There are many stories in Puranas regarding these migrations. You have many sages mentioned into Puranas. For example, you have Agastya or Parshuram. So their stories, jo mythological stories, again these are mythological stories, but the stories how they are written, that does tell you that a significant migration is happening towards south in Deccan region and in the southern region. For example, you have a story that Agastya Rishi is crossing Vindhya mountain and then he gives order to Vindhya mountain that unless he does not return back, you do not have to grow. And that basically leads to growth of Vindhya mountain. Or then there is a story that Parshuram, when Parshuram basically goes to south, and in south basically he throws his axe and this axe falls somewhere in Karnataka. He goes to Kanyakumari and he throws his axe and this axe falls somewhere in Karnataka, and this entire region now he again comes back to north and calls all the Brahmins and settles into southern region. So again these are mythological stories, but these stories have a significance that we are talking about migration to Deccan region and southern region. When exactly does it happen? That's very difficult question to answer, but we have to assume that somewhere perhaps in later Vedic period itself or Mahajanpad period, by Mahajanpad period definitely, right? So in society, we are talking about rulers who claim themselves to be Brahmins, who claim themselves that it is their moral duty to uphold fourfold Varna system. Society, even though succession, the kingdom goes to son, but the kings, many kings are known by their maternal names, name of their mother. So that does signify perhaps some higher status to women, but it's not enough proof to say that, let's say for example, what is their exact status in the society? Do they have right to property? Do they have other type of rights? तो ये सारे क्वेश्चन हम खाली इससे आंसर नहीं कर सकते, that kings are known by their mothers. So just write down few things here. Satvahana rulers claimed themselves to be Brahmins, and their duty, it was their duty to uphold the fourfold Varna system. It was their duty to uphold the fourfold Varna system. Fourfold Varna system. In this time, what do you mean by that? So Varna system and caste system जो है, often we confuse between two. ये जब आपकी society की classes होंगी तो और ज़्यादा detail में हम discuss करेंगे. But Varna and caste are two different concepts. Varna and caste are not exactly same concept. A very successful thing which has occurred in the society, and one of the most important success of Brahmanical idea will be that caste system became integral to Varna system. But जो emergence of caste है, caste as an idea, caste as a social institution, that is frankly very different from Varna system. But at the same time, you are right that many of the castes, depending upon their occupation, they also have Varna associated with it. But at the same time, they are two different concepts. So fourfold Varna system, what started in later Vedic age, even in early Vedic age, the later part of early Vedic age, that continues. जो proliferation of caste and subcaste, that is a later phenomena, frankly. That happens later. Write down. Many of the rulers were known by their mother's name. For example, Gautami Putra Satkarni, or his son Vasishti Putra Pulumai, even though succession of the kingdom went to sons. Give the next reading. In economy, okay, first of all, only Kshatriyas should be the kings. I will not interpret it like this. That ruling class was called Kshatriyas. That is how classification emerged. That ruling class was called Kshatriyas. But we have discussed this in previous classes also. That even among Brahmins and Kshatriyas, there is a conflict. This conflict is regarding supremacy. Kshatriyas do not like priestly domination. Brahmins do not like Kshatriyas domination. So there are many cases. For example, take the case of Parshuram. Parshuram, as the story goes, that he clears the entire earth 17 times of Kshatriyas because of their pride. Right? So there are many stories like that. It does tell you conflict between Kshatriyas and Brahmins. Right? So just because Brahmins are rulers, and there are, by the way, many Brahmin rulers. Pushyamitra Shunga was a Brahmin, he is a ruler. Satvana claim themselves to be Brahmins, they are rulers. Just because they are Brahmin rulers does not mean they are Kshatriyas. And just because they are Brahmins does not mean that they cannot uphold fourfold Varna system. Because fourfold Varna system is more sacred to the entire religious classification. Right? That is how it had become a very rigid system at this point of time. Right on? In economy? Agriculture, such as rice cultivation, cotton, agriculture such as rice, cotton, were very prominent, along with mining, many of the traders and artisans called themselves Gandhikas, even though the term originally meant perfume makers. The term originally meant perfume makers. The title Gandhi is derived from Gandhika. The title Gandhi, जो अभी भी भुगत रहे हैं by the way, the title Gandhi is derived from Gandhika, not Gandhiji. I have a lot of respect for Gandhiji. The term or the title Gandhi is derived from Gandhika. So Gandhikas were basically perfume makers, but later this term signified all type of shopkeepers. जितने भी shopkeepers हैं, traders हैं, artisans हैं, all of them call themselves to be Gandhikas, even though originally the term meant perfume makers. That is what it means. Right? On Satvahanas issued copper and silver coins. Satvahanas issued copper and silver coins. Satvahanas issued copper and silver coins. Write down. Next, religion. Religion, language भी साथ में लिख लो. They were worshippers of Vishnu and Shiv. They were worshippers of Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva. They started the practice of giving tax-free lands to Brahmins as well as Buddhist monks. To Brahmins as well as Buddhist monks. this is a very important fact, ये जो giving tax free land to Brahmins है, this becomes a very important political tool by later rulers to attain legitimacy. Again, remember, religion politics go hand in hand. Even today it goes hand in hand, and that is not a new feature. It has occurred since ancient times, that religion and politics has always went hand in hand. So providing tax-free land to Brahmins and Buddhist monks, and this providing of tax-free land to Brahmins, it becomes a very popular practice by later rulers, at some scale by Guptas or Vaktak rulers, Vaktaks who substituted after decline of Satvahana. The same reason was ruled by a dynasty called Vaktak dynasty, which are contemporary to Gupta dynasty, but even more by Pallavas and Cholas, which we will discuss in later classes. Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva. But at the same time, they also provided tax-free land to Buddhist monks. So in general, it does depict that even though they are worshippers of Lord Shiva and Vishnu, overall there is religious tolerance. Give the next heading. In administration. Language में sorry आप लिख सकते हो. Sorry. Just write down in language. Prakrit was the official language. Prakrit was the official language written in Brahmi script. Prakrit was the official language written in Brahmi script. Use of Sanskrit is very rare. Use of Sanskrit was very rare. Sorry? Prakrit was an ancient language. Local languages which led to development of Prakrit, they are called Upbhrans. There is a word for local languages. So Prakrit and Pali जैसे जो है. Again remember, language also has been used as a tool of social differentiation, if I can use that word. That elites spoke some other language, commoners spoke some other language. Even today in today's India, you can use it. For example, English is considered as a language of elites. But then there are regional languages. Vernaculars हम जिसको बोलते हैं. Hindi or many variations of Hindi and all the local languages. That is what common people speak. Right? So, जो dialects of languages होंगे. So that is what common people speak. So even today we consider, for example, somehow English as a language of elite. Similarly, in ancient times also Sanskrit was language of elites. But commoners spoke languages such as Pali and Prakrit. Sanskrit was जो सबसे greatest scholars होंगे, जो सबसे ज़्यादा पढ़े लिखे लोग होंगे, they will speak Sanskrit. And speaking Sanskrit and pure Sanskrit was considered as an intellectual achievement. So, but at the same time, there are exceptions to this rule. Mauryas mainly wrote in, they did not use as they wrote Prakrit, they used Prakrit language or Pali language. Similarly, Shatvahanas also they used Prakrit language. So Prakrit is not a local language. I will not use the word local language for Prakrit, but there are many languages before Prakrit, which Patanjali calls Upbhrans languages. That before development of Prakrit, there are many local languages, which is collectively called Upbhrans. Okay? So Prakrit is not a local language, by the way. Prakrit was spoken on a much larger scale, even though it has not survived in today's time, but there are many words of Prakrit which we use in Hindi or many other languages, not just Hindi, but many other languages. In administration, give the heading. In administration. Write down here. Kingdom was divided into districts. Kingdom was divided into districts called Ahar. Kingdom was divided into districts called Ahar. The important officials were known as Amatya and Mahamatras. The important officials were known as Amatya, Mahamatras, very similar to Mahamatas of Mauryan period. So this is direct replica of Mauryan administration. The village headman was called Golmika. The village headman was called Golmika, who sometimes also headed a small military regiment. Who sometimes also headed a small military regiment. Online students, please send your doubts to classroom coordinator. This is the problem which I told you in the previous class also. If all of you are asking question, how many, so आप एक बार जरा इनको message एक post कर दो. Please send your questions to classroom coordinator. That will be better. Golmika, they were village headmen. Sometimes they also led a small military regiment. And एक last point लिख सकते हो. Satavahanas also contributed to architecture such as rock cut architecture, rock cut architecture, comma, monasteries, chaitya and viharas, in the Deccan region. So maybe you find stupas at Amravati or Nagarjun Konda. They were the construction started during Satvahana period. Rock cut architecture basically means it's very, again, in ancient India this was a very popular tradition, having architecture after cutting from rock. जैसे one of the greatest architectural feature is Kailashnath temple of Ellora. आपने पढ़ा होगा. It is the single largest rock cut architecture anywhere of the world. That entire temple जो है, it is cut from a single rock. So such type of rock cut architecture was a very popular tradition in ancient India. Goes back to Satvahana period. In later period, during especially Gupta period, it became even more prevalent. Chaitya and viharas, these are Buddhist architecture. Chaitya basically that is place of worship. Viharas are Buddhist monks often used to come from different locations, stay here. It's like a resting place. And Chaitya was a place of worship. Similarly, stupas are, again stupas we have talked about it, a very integral part of Buddhist architecture. So many of such architecture from Satvahana period even today has survived. The most important is a Chaitya called Karle Chaitya. It is in Maharashtra, जो सबसे famous जो है. So this is about Satvahana Empire. One last line you can write. The empire declined by early 3rd century. The empire declined by early 3rd century. Many kingdoms emerged from it. The most important being Vaktak rulers. The most important being Vaktak rulers. And that's actually a very valid point. That जो earliest Telugu literature है, earliest Telugu and Kannada literature है, that is also found along with Prakrit. So Prakrit is the official language, but the earliest uses of Kannada and Telugu literature. So if you look at the Dravidian languages, Tamil is the oldest language, followed by Kannada, followed by Telugu, and then Malayalam is relatively a new language compared to Kannada, Telugu and Tamil. So the Kannada and Kannada and Telugu jo uses hai, especially again remember languages also evolve. So earliest form of Telugu literature and Kannada literature you find in Satvahana inscriptions. So that is also correct. But Prakrit was the official language. My main point was that Sanskrit was used at a very small Sanskrit, even though you find some inscriptions, but in a very small amount compared to Prakrit language. The official language that was Prakrit. And they of course became a great patron of Amaravati school of sculpture, which we discussed in the previous class. That you have 3 schools of sculpture in India. Mathura school and Gandhara school by Kushanas and Amaravati school by Satvahanas. आप ये भी लिख भी सकते हो. A school of sculpture known as Amaravati School of Art. Amaravati School of Art emerged during Satvahana period. During Satvahana period. So Amaravati was their capital. Even today Andhra Pradesh ka jo capital hai, that Amaravati name comes from Satvahana period. So they had 2 capitals, Amaravati and Pratyasthana. So Pratyasthana is what modern Patan is. There is a district in Maharashtra called Patan. That is, in ancient times it was called Pratyasthana. So they had 2 capitals. आप लिख सकते हो. Satvahanas had 2 capitals, Amaravati and Pratyasthana. So this is about major development in Deccan region in post-Mauryan age. We are talking about post-Mauryan age. Now let's go further south and let's see what is happening. So give the next heading, Megalithic period. Megalithic age. So megalithic age hai. Remember the very first class where we talked about prehistory, where you do not have any written sources, whatever information we get from archaeological sources. So megalithic age is age in Tamil Nadu and in southern Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, especially in southern Andhra Pradesh, that you find a group of people just after Neolithic age. You find this age called, it is called megalithic age, because people are still using stone tools, hence the word lithic. But the mega term hai, that signifies their burial practices. That they adopted a very interesting burial practices, that at the center there is a dead body, and around the center you have these large stones erected around this dead body. And I will also tell you that there is a great coincidence here, that you find similar type of burial practices in different part of the world. Not here only, but you find in the region of Norway and Sweden, in region of UK, similar type of burial practices was adopted. We have to assume that it is a coincidence, because there is no way as of now we are talking about a contact between these civilizations. We are mainly talking about a time period of about 900 to 400 BC. Right? So ये जो time period है where written sources are not available, but we know about a group of people who are known by their burial practices, and I think I have few of the pictures of these burials so that you can appreciate what type of burial practice I am talking about. So you have these dead bodies, and around these dead bodies, either in concentric circles, and as you go away from the circle, the size of stone pillars, it increases. Or something like this, that at the center dead bodies, and around them you have these giant rocks which are erected for them. So the most accepted theory is that this was given to warriors of the tribe, or the most perhaps ruler of the tribe. But the most accepted theory is that this was given for warriors of the tribe. The tribes often they entered into warfare, and those who perished, those who died, they were given this special status of such type of burial. These burials are always found outside or away from the settlement area. So this phase of history, known by the burial practices, it is called megalithic age in the region of Tamil Nadu and southern Andhra Pradesh. And we are talking about group of people who knew agriculture, who knew animal rearing, because we find evidences of both agriculture, animal rearing, but at the same time they also entered into continuous warfare with each other, and these burials are a result of that. So you can just write down few things here. Yes. Burial had some, sorry, what? In case of megalithic burial, I haven't come across such. So what he's saying is that burials had some sort of opening where more than one dead bodies. That may be true, that more than one dead bodies are kept around. Just for example, this here is example of more than definitely one dead body. ये जो image है यहाँ पे. So that definitely reflects more than one dead body. But what you are saying, that is a feature of जो pyramids हैं, जो इजिप्ट में pyramids मिलते हैं. So such type of opening to, I haven't read it, but if it is, I haven't read such description of megalithic burials that there are openings and which can be used for another dead body in the same megalithic burial. Okay. Write on just few things here. The Neolithic phase of South India. The Neolithic phase of South India was succeeded by the Neolithic phase of South India was succeeded by megalithic phase ब्रैकेट में आप लिख सकते हो about 1200 to 400 BC. 1200 to 400 BC. They are not known from their settlement. They are not known from their settlement. They are not known from their settlement, but from the burial practices they adopted. But from the burial practices they adopted. From the burial practices which were adopted. The graves are called megaliths. The graves are called megaliths because they were encircled by big stone pieces, and in most cases located outside the settlement area. Located outside the settlement area. Outside the settlement area. The first use of iron objects. The first use of iron objects. The first use of iron objects in South India is from this period. But at the same time, one thing I should highlight it here, that recent excavations in Tamil Nadu have highlighted settlements and use of iron as early as 2000 BC or even before than that. So the problem is that archaeology is a very important source of history, but it hasn't been used a lot in case of India. And that is quite unfortunate given the civilizational history which we have. So the more excavation in the region of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, it does point out a civilization perhaps much older than, for example, I'm going to talk about the next topic, that is Sangam age. And Sangam age ka jo most accepted timeline people use, that is from 300 BC to 300 AD. And this is the time when people think that now people have started writing. But many historians actually contend that this Sangam age should go to perhaps 500 BC or even 600 BC. That is also one school of thought, that people in this region knew about writing as early as 600 BC or 500 BC. So we require more archaeological sources, and the early use of iron as of now, if you read R.A. Sharma or even in Upinder Singh textbook, it mentions that in megalithic period you have the use of iron, but we have recent excavations and the carbon dating pinpoints even earlier than megalithic is. Anyways, write down the next bullet point. Black and red ware pottery has been found. Black and red ware pottery has been found buried in these megaliths. Buried in these megaliths. Buried in these megaliths. The number of agricultural tools, are less compared to tools for hunting and fighting. Compared to tools for hunting and fighting. Tools for hunting and fighting. This does signify that people did not practice advanced agriculture. Evidences of rice, ragi, cultivation have been found. Megaliths are mainly concentrated in Eastern Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Megaliths are mainly concentrated in Eastern Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. For example, Payampalli, Kudumanal. Payampalli, Kudumanal, etc. The Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas, write down. Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas mentioned in Ashokan inscriptions, may have belonged to last phase of megalithic age. last phase of megalithic age. Last phase of megalithic age. There is a question by Anurag regarding who was King Hala or Hal. He was a Satvana ruler, mentioned in some Puranas, a Satvana ruler known for a very famous book on Prakrit. Right? So that is, he was a Satvana ruler. Anyways, the next topic is very important. 3 topics are very important for prelims examination: Mauryan period, Sangam age and Gupta period. So the next period is Sangam age. Give this heading. (300 BC to 300 AD). Yes. No. That's a very good question. That in northern India you find a shift from, let's say, stone, then copper, then you find bronze, then finally you find iron. In case of southern India, the iron use, I will repeat, it may be earlier than what we think it is. So first of all, we require more evidences to come to this conclusion, but there is a very good chance that use of iron is earlier than what we think it is. Right now we think that it may have occurred around 1200 BC megalithic age, but it may have occurred even before that. And we do not find exact same type of progression in case of South India, right? So that is actually correct. Sangam age. First thing first, ये जो 300 BC to 300 AD है, this is just an indicative timeline. That should be very clear. We are talking about a period of 600 years, but this is an indicative timeline. We are talking about historical period now, that we have written sources or people knew about writing, and some of those written sources have actually survived from Sangam age. So the reason it is called Sangam, because in ancient text from Tamil Nadu, we find that 3 great assembly of poets occurred in ancient India. These 3 assemblies were called Sangam. They were patronized by rulers of Madurai, who were Pandyas, and these poets wrote in detail about all of the exploit of these kingdoms. They also wrote about philosophy, they wrote about society, economy, all of that. And this is the most important text to know about this period in this region of India. So that is why it is called Sangam age. So first thing first, why is it called Sangam age? So because the type of literature which has survived and which is the most important source to know about this region, that literature is called Sangam literature, hence we use the term Sangam age. So Sangam age, there are 3 Sangam. First Sangam, second Sangam के जो works हैं, they have not survived. जो second Sangam के जो work हैं, very few work have survived. For example, one of the most important work of second Sangam is Tolkapiyam, which is a book of Tamil grammar, very similar to how Ashtadhyayi is a book of Sanskrit grammar or Mahabhashya is a book of Sanskrit grammar. So Tolkapiyam is a book of Tamil grammar which may have been compiled in the second Sangam. But most of the work of third Sangam has survived. So whatever history we know, that is from third Sangam. The problem is that there is a very good chance that lot of this work was orally transmitted initially. So again, going back how old it is very difficult to answer. But finally it was written down, but it may have been written down on perishable items which may not have survived. Some of that has survived. अब इसमें जो 2 सबसे जो famous work हैं by the way, and these 2 most famous works are not from Sangam age per se, but they are called post Sangam age. That you have development in these 3 Sangam assemblies, 3 assemblies known as Sangam. But then just after that also you have some of the greatest work of poetry in Tamil, and 2 most famous work is Shilapadikaram and Mani Mekalai. These are 2 of the greatest work from Tamil Nadu, from the Tamil literature, from ancient Tamil. I should also tell one more thing, that एक ना बड़ा डिबेट चलते रहता है कि संस्कृत इज द ओल्डेस्ट लैंग्वेज, तमिल इज द ओल्डेस्ट लैंग्वेज. इस टाइप का डिबेट आपने आई एम वेरी श्योर आपने कहीं ना कहीं पढ़ा होगा, दैट इज संस्कृत द ओल्डेस्ट लैंग्वेज और इज तमिल द ओल्डेस्ट लैंग्वेज. तो ये जो डिबेट है, दिस इज फ्रैंकली अगेन आई विल रिपीट अ पॉलिटिकल डिबेट, बिकॉज नीदर संस्कृत हैज सर्वाइव्ड in its original form, nor Tamil has survived in its original form. What was earliest Tamil or what was earliest Sanskrit, that clearly we do not use it in modern times. So that should be very clear. So ये जो debates हैं, this is just for regional prides, for political brownie points used by political parties. अगर आप intellectual basis देखोगे तो एक intellectual argument बस यही होगा कि तमिल ना तो ancient तमिल जो है, तमिल which we use today or Sanskrit which we use today, it may not have been the exactly same what it was thousands of years ago. The languages also have evolved. So such type of questions frankly these are not good questions frankly. आप ऐसे समझ लो कि these are not good questions. These are questions just for regional pride which have a political point. You just have a political point to score. These are not for intellectual discussions. Anyways, so two of the greatest work of Tamil poetry which has survived. The first is called Shilappadikaram, which literally translates to the story of anklet, payal. And then there is a story called Mani Mekalai. So the Shilappadikaram ka jo story hai, that story is of a person called Kovalan. Kovalan is initially a faithful husband, and Kovalan ki jo wife hai, he leaves his wife in later part of time and he goes to a courtesan whose name is Madhavi. But later he has some sort of conflict with Madhavi, and then he comes back to his wife whose name is Kannagi. So he comes back, he is a very rich merchant initially, but when he comes back, he has looted, all of his wealth is looted on Madhavi. He comes back, but still he is accepted by his wife Kannagi, and his wife gives one of her anklet that this is made of gold or silver. You go and sell it and you start your business again. So he goes to Madurai and he tries to sell this, but this is also the time that Pandyan king and his queen anklet has been lost. And people are searching for this anklet. And these two anklets are very similar to that because of there is a case against Kovalan, and he is arrested and he is thrown to jail. Now Kovalan is never able to prove his innocence. Because of that, he is given capital punishment. He is executed. Madhavi gets to know this, Kannagi gets to know this information. She comes with her other anklet and actually proves the innocence of her husband, that he was innocent. The king and queen realizes that they have committed a mistake. They commit suicide for it. And Kannagi is so distraught by this injustice that she comes out of the court, tears off one of her breasts and throws that into city of Madurai, and entire Madurai is engulfed into fire. So this is the main plot of this story Shilappadikaram. But there are many subplots and there are many philosophical discussions, lot of discussion about society, about economy. And despite a story, a great work of, by the way, poetry, one of the greatest work of poetry in Indian literature, but it is a very important source to know about what type of society we are talking about. In terms of philosophical tradition, in terms of society, in terms of what people believed in, that we have kings who committed suicide because they have caused injustice, right? So the sense of duty which we are talking about among kings. So it's a great story and one of the most important work in post-Sangam literature. The other work, it has a lot of Jainism influence, a lot of Jain influences here in this story. Then the other story is Mani Mekalai. Mani Mekalai is a continuation. In Mani Mekalai, the story is of the daughter of Kovalan and Madhavi. Madhavi, the courtesan from the first book. So Mani Mekalai jo hai, she is daughter of Kovalan and Madhavi. And Mani Mekalai wants to become a Buddhist nun, but she is very beautiful. Many people are after her. One of them is a prince. And because of that, Mani Mekalai has this magical power and a magical alm also. Magical power is that she can take form of another woman. And she takes form of another woman just to get rid of prince's attention. But then the form she takes is actually of someone else's wife. And that person finds the prince and prince is killed for it. He murders the prince and for that Mani Mekalai is arrested. But later Mani Mekalai proves that she is actually a person with great spirituality. She is actually a saint and she is freed. And this is also the time when in Kanchi there is a famine. People are not able to eat anything. And she has this magical elm which can produce anything. She produces food grain, feeds to the people, And at the end of story, there is a Buddhist Sangh passing from Kanchi. She accepts Buddhism and she fulfills her lifelong goal of becoming a Buddhist nun. So this is the central plot of Money Make Life. Both of these works are example of post-Sangam literature. But both of these works are considered some of the greatest work of poetry which has been developed into India. And both of these works are very important source to know about Sangam age, apart from the Sangam literature itself. तो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट जो हमारा सोर्स है टू नो अबाउट चोलास, चेरास एंड पांड्यास, दैट इज संगम लिटरेचर इटसेल्फ. तो गिव दिस हेडिंग सोर्सेस. Sources. Very first is Sangam literature. Write down few things about Sangam literature. According to Tamil legends, there were three assembly of poets. Patronized by Pandya kings of Madurai, of Madurai. They were popularly called Muchangam or Sangam. The work of first Sangam has not survived. So basically it is believed that the first Sangam occurs under the leadership of Rishi Agastya, same Agastya who are also mentioned in many Puranas. Remember that. So we are talking about the how stories are developing, that many Puranas mention one of the great sages named Agastya. And same Agastya is said to be the chairman of the first Sangam, that under his guidance, the first Sangam occurs in the city of Madurai. And there are many legends associated with Rishi Agastya, that how he helps in killing of Rakshasas, or how he helps in, let's say for example, Brahmins to different part of the country. So there are many stories around him. It is also said that he is one of the earliest proponent of Tamil literature. In Puranas it is mentioned. Things which are written in Sanskrit, and there it is mentioned that he is the earliest contributor to Tamil literature. Write down in next bullet point. The second Sangam, the work of second Sangam, just add a word. The work of second Sangam has also not survived, with the exception of Tolkapiyam, a book on Tamil grammar. The work of third Sangam, and post Sangam literature have survived, which are the major sources of history of South India in ancient times. History of South India in ancient times. Ancient times. The work can be divided into two groups. Sangam literature can be divided into two groups. Sangam literature can be divided into two groups. Write down in bullet points. The narrative texts. Narrative texts are called Melakanakku. The narrative texts are called Melakanakku, which are works of heroic poetry, works of heroic poetry, basically glorification of heroes who have, a bracket में लिख लेना, glorification of heroes. So Melakanakku, work of heroic poetry, and second, didactic texts. Didactic मतलब जिसका philosophical orientation है. ये narratives हैं, these are stories. जो didactic texts होंगे, they will be stories with some moral knowledge. Right? नैतिक शिक्षा जो आपने पढ़ा है ना बचपन में, so something like that. That these are stories with some moral teachings. Hence the term didactic texts. Didactic texts are called Keelkanakku. Didactic texts are called Keelkanakku. Write down one last point. Two of the greatest work of Tamil literature. Two of the greatest work of Tamil literature. Silappadikaram and Manimekalai. This is N. Manimekalai are post-Sangam work and examples of didactic text. Examples of didactic text. Keelkanakku. That they have a moral lesson. Didactic text. Write down next bullet point. Silappadikaram deals with love story of a rich merchant Kovalan and a courtesan Madhavi a courtesan dancer basically. A courtesan Madhavi and Kovalan's wife Kanaggi. Kovalan's wife Kanaggi. आप ब्रैकेट में कहीं पे लिख लेना, दिस लिटरली ट्रांसलेट्स टू स्टोरी ऑफ एंकलेट. So anklet represents lot of things in this story. Anklet is source of greed. Anklet represents theft. Anklet represents source of sorrow for Kovalan and Kanaggi. And finally, when Kanaggi dies and goes to heaven, she meets her husband and now she is wearing both of her anklets. So anklet also finally represents happiness. So same thing has been used for many things together. So that is how great poets write. It is written by Ilango Adigal. It is written by Ilango Adigal. Ilango Adigal. At some places you will also find Ilan Kovatikal. Ilan Kovatikal. Same name. Money Mekalai, next bullet point. Money Mekalai is an anti-love story. With the central character daughter of Madhavi and Kovalan, wants to join a Buddhist Sangh as a nun. It was written by Shithalai Shatanar. It was written by Shithalai Shatanar. Two very important works. Their main characters, authors, and the fact that they are example of post Sangam literature. ये चीजें सबसे पहले प्रीलिम्स के लिए तो यही क्लियर होना चाहिए. We haven't started our discussion about Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas or society or economy or religion, all of that. We haven't discussed it, but सबसे पहले तो ये भी clear होना चाहिए. So that is the first and most important source, but there are other sources also. The second source is a very famous book. We do not know the author of this book. It's called Periplus of Erythraean Sea. Periplus of Erythraean Sea. Why this book is important? Because this book tells you about ancient trade routes. So trade routes which connected India to European countries, especially Roman Empire. It has details about that. We do not know who is the author. but it does tell you about the ancient trade routes. You had a question. Because Manimekalai continuously rejects the proposal of the prince who wants to marry her. So she is not interested in any type of love story at all, and that is why she takes this form of another woman, and because of that she is arrested, because that woman's husband kills the prince. That prince is behind my wife, but actually he is behind Manimekalai. No, the main story is about becoming nun. That is why it is anti-love story. That love is not the plot here. In fact, love is rejected. Continuously love is being rejected by the central character. Right? And finally, her final desire is to become a Buddhist nun. Hence it is called anti-love story. So Periplus of Erythraean Sea, a book which talks about ancient trade routes. We do not have information about who is the author. Then there is another book by Greek writer, Natural History. We know the author, Pliny. We talked about Pliny. Mauryan Empire के केस में भी हमने डिस्कस किया था. Natural History by Pliny. Then numismatics is also a very important source. Because we find many gold coins of Roman origin into India, right? So we do know about trade route. We do know about this. We have this evidence that trade existed between Roman Empire and southern kingdoms. And epigraphy is also important. We have found some inscriptions written in Tamil using Tamil Brahmi inscriptions. There was an inscription, Brahmi inscription was very popular in northern India. In ancient time, जो सबसे popular inscription in the southern India था, that was called Tamil Brahmi inscription. So it was a branch of Brahmi inscription itself. Language was Tamil, but script was Tamil Brahmi inscription. So there are many epigraphical evidences of some kings, not a lot, but some kings which are important source about knowing about Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. So these are the main sources. Give this heading, Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. So this part here of Tamil Nadu mainly, that was ruled by Cholas. The southernmost part was ruled by Pandyas, and what modern Kerala is, that was ruled by Cheras. I haven't mentioned in this map is quite accurate in the sense that it does not talk about any fixed geographical boundary, because frankly there was none at this point of time. We are talking about boundaries where lot of conflict occurred. Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas always fought with each other. So Cholas in upper part of Tamil Nadu, Pandyas the southernmost part, Cheras what modern Kerala will be. All of these three kingdoms became very prosperous because of their trade with Romans. जो spices हैं at this point of time, trade became very popular and बहुत सारे Roman outposts हमको मिलते हैं. All these kingdoms had their dedicated ports. For example, Pandyas had a port called Korkai, Cheras had a port called Mujiris, even today it has survived. Then you had Cholas had a port Kaveri Patnam, which even today is quite popular, right? All of them had some of the greatest cities. For example, Madurai was one of the greatest city in Tamil Nadu. So was Urayur, which was the capital of Cholas. So this was a very prosperous kingdom, not only because of agriculture, but also because of custom duties collected by the rulers. With their surplus trade, there is a surplus trade here. Most of the things are being exported. Very few things are being imported here. Most of the things, mainly spices, precious stones, they are being exported. Few things are being imported. For example, we have instance of slave trade, that few of the merchants bought slave from Roman Empire. Or you have, let's say for example, gold may have been bought because there was more gold in Roman kingdom. So that may have been one of those items. Or maybe it represents simply a sort of transaction. So more things are being exported, very few things are being imported. So there is a surplus trade, and that surplus trade plays a very important role in prosperity of these three kingdoms. In fact, at one instance, जो Pliny जो अभी मैंने discuss किया था, Pliny mentions in his book that Roman Empire is being devoid of its gold because of its trade with India, that all gold is going to India. So that is also instance mentioned, that we are talking about a surplus trade. So despite prosperity, one thing which is throughout this Sangam age which is common, that these three kingdoms are fighting a lot with each other. They are fighting, they fought many battles. One ruler is attacking another ruler with help of his own feudatories. He emerges victorious. And many of these battles have some very interesting terms. Let's say for example, there is a term that the Pandya ruler lost their drums. So losing their drums basically signifies that they have lost the battle. So losing battle is considered something demeaning, an insultful thing. So there are many such battles which are mentioned throughout this Sangam age, that all of them three are fighting with each other a lot. So with decline of trade, the fight may have continued, but the resources declined, and because of that by 300 or 400 AD, all of these three kingdoms gradually declined. इसके बाद का जो period है, I will talk about this period in detail, but एक चीज जो अभी मैं clear कर देता हूँ, that from about 400 AD till 700 AD, we do not have lot of information about any of these three kingdoms. What happens to them, we frankly do not know. This region is now called, this period, in South India it is called Kalbharais. That group of people known as Kalbharas, they played the most important role in the political development in South India. We do not know a lot about them because they did not write anything. Whatever information we know about them, it is from other sources. For example, later they were defeated by Pallava rulers and Chalukya rulers. So we know about from their sources that there is a group of people called Kalbharas who ruled in this region. They issued coins, and some coins have been found with their names, but that is not enough to know a lot about them. So from about 400 to 700 AD, we do not have lot of information that what is happening here in terms of political development. We have archaeological evidences, but we do not have numismatic evidences, but we do not have as such written records available. So the next phase hoga, that we are going to talk from about 7th, 8th century, or in some cases 6th century also. As a Pallavas ka jo rule hai, that starts in 6th century itself. But there is a gap here, and that gap, I'm explaining it right here, I will repeat in later classes also. This gap is simply because we do not have lot of information to know that what happened in this region. So anyways, I talked about trade routes. So I have some maps regarding trade routes. This is a map taken from the book Erythraean Sea, that you have all these trade routes which connect different part of the world. Or we also have this information that people knew the monsoonal wind, that how monsoon actually, monsoonal wind ka jo direction hai wo kaisa hai, and that development may have occurred about 1st century AD, and that further increased the trade between Roman Empire and Indian kingdoms. So this, ye jo map of Erythraean Sea hai, that is taken from this book Periplus of Erythraean Sea, and from that you also have this information about all these trade routes which existed, by the way, within India. Jaise ye jo picture hai, this picture is picture of Silk Route, this here is picture of Uttar Path, then you have Dakshin Path also, the Deccan region ko ye kar raha hai, and then you have sea trade routes which is connecting ancient Indian kingdoms, southern kingdoms with other kingdoms of Europe. So all of that information comes from various sources, right? And all of these sources talk about these three kingdoms together, Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. That is why I have mentioned them together. So give the first heading. अच्छा, एक bracket में आप लिख सकते हो, they are collectively known as They are collectively known as Movender. They are collectively known as Movender, which basically will translate to three chiefs. There is a question by Vishal that do we have written record of megalithic age very similar to proto-historic period of Indus Valley civilization? The answer is no. We do not have written records per se. That is why I call them prehistoric period, not proto-history, not historical period. So megalithic age जो है, that will be part of prehistoric period. Give this heading, Cholas. तो एक चीज जो सबसे पहले मैं क्लियर कर दूं, that Chola which we are discussing right now from Sangam age, different from imperial Cholas I am going to discuss in later classes. So kingdom is same, hence we use the term Chola kingdom, but same reason we are talking about power center of power is around same river, Kaveri river जो उसके around center of power है. But जो Cholas which emerged in 9th, 10th, 11th century and Cholas which we are talking about right here, they are different. Okay, so that should be very clear. Write down here. First thing first, their capital was Urayur. Their capital was Urayur. Their premium port was Puhar. What modern Kaveri Patnam is. Their premium port was Puhar, and their royal emblem was tiger. Their royal emblem was tiger. So बहुत सारे नाम है here and there, scattered names हैं, आप लिख सकते हो. One of the early kings named Elara. One of the early kings named Elara is mentioned to have conquered Sri Lanka. Is mentioned to have conquered Sri Lanka. So which does signify one thing, that they maintained a very efficient navy. Attacking Sri Lanka, that does require navy. So we are talking about naval power in ancient times. Write down. The greatest king from this age, the greatest Chola king from this age, the greatest Chola king from this age is considered to be Karikal. At many places you will find the name Karikalan Chola. Karikal. He founded Puhar. Which became a great center of trade and commerce. He constructed an embankment. He constructed an embankment of about 150 kilometer along the river Kaveri, embankment का mainly purpose होता है flood water से save करना, that you have excess of water does not flood to the main part of cities. He defeated, write down, he defeated an alliance of Pandyas and Cheras. He defeated an alliance of Pandyas and Cheras at the Battle of Veni, in Sangam literature. It is mentioned that 11 rulers lost their drums in the field. 11 rulers lost their drums in the field in this battle. So again, because this is a work of poetry, such type of things are mentioned a lot. एक और आप write down next bullet point. Another ruler named Ilandirayan is mentioned contemporary to Karikal, who may have been his subordinate. Karikal's subordinate. Who may have been Karikal's subordinate. We will talk collectively about economy, society, religion, all of that collectively. We are mainly talking about political development at this part of time. जो society, economy हम साथ में discuss करेंगे. Let's take a break here. After that, we will continue this discussion. The drum here signifies that people losing the drum signifies victory of Karikalan Chola. So drum has a poetic significance here. That आप war के पहले बहुत बार drum बजाते हैं ना, right? So losing drum basically means that these people lost the war. Give this heading Chera. Right down here, the Chera kingdom. Mainly included what modern Kerala is. Their capital was Vanji or Karur. Their capital was Vanji or Karur. Their port was Muchiri. Their port was Muchiri, and royal emblem was royal emblem was a bow. Royal emblem was a bow. Emblem. The royal emblem was bow. Muziris sometimes remain in use because Kerala government has done some good work here for restoration of this ancient heritage site. So it was called Muchiri, now it is called Muziris. It has been rewarded by both national government as well as international scale, that for restoration of an ancient site. A very important port from where trade with Roman Empire included. Right on. The earliest known Chera king is Udiyan Jeral. Right on next. One of the most prominent king was Nendan Jeral Adan. There will be N in between. Nendan Jeral Adan. He took the title of Adhiraj. He took the title of Adhiraj. Adhiraj basically means emperor. Okay, I'm very surprised that if emblem ka kya meaning hota hai, I need to explain that also. What is the meaning of emblem? What is our national emblem? I hope you know that what is our national emblem. So emblem, for example, many countries, even today, जैसे our national emblem क्या होगा? जो सारनाथ पिलर अशोका जो है, that is our national emblem. So many kingdoms in past they have used emblem as a national symbol. So हिंदी में प्रतीक बोलते हैं, like this national emblem, right? So often in past also you find this instance where kingdoms had their emblem. जैसे emblem क्या होगा? For example, now any type of war, जो flags होंगे, वहाँ पे emblem जो भी हो उसका picture होगा. जो chariots होंगे वहाँ पे emblem का picture होगा, right? So that was basically a type of symbol which was used by kings to showcase their strength throughout the empire. Right on. His son Sengutuvan is considered as a great Chera king from ancient time. Sangam texts describe his military victory. Against neighboring kingdoms. It is also said It is also said that he invaded the north and crossed the river Ganga. It is also said that he invaded the north and crossed the river Ganga. Crossed the river Ganga. One thing, however, I should highlight that this may be an poetic exaggeration. Crossing the river Ganga, we do find one instance that is under Rajendra Chola. And Rajendra Chola was ruling not Sangam Chola, but later Chola in 11th century. Rajendra Chola, he had conquered not Sri Lanka, Maldives, Java, Sumatra, but he had conquered entire Bengal and he crossed the river Ganga. After that, he goes back to his kingdom, Chola kingdom, and he establishes a new city called Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which basically signifies this event that he crossed the river Ganga and defeated the kingdoms of the region of Magad and Bengal. Right. So this is one instance where we have evidence that happens in 11th century. But in this case, Sengutwan ka jo ye hai, this may be a poetic exaggeration. We do not find such evidences as such. But as per literature, it is mentioned. In Sangam literature, it is mentioned that he crosses river Ganga and attacks many of the kings here and emerges victorious. And last heading, Pandyas. Pandyas. The Pandyan territory, write down, the Pandyan territory included southernmost region, their capital was Madurai. Their capital was Madurai. Their premium port was Korkai, and royal emblem was fish. Their premium port was Korkai, and royal emblem was fish. By the way, there is a very interesting instance. Megasthenes, when he was ambassador in the court of Chandragupta Maurya, Megasthenes is said to have visited entire India, and he comes to the first time the term Pandya is mentioned in Megasthenes' work, where he mentions that this region is ruled by a woman ruler and it's a very prosperous kingdom. So, आप लिख सकते हो, Pandyas are first mentioned by Megasthenes. Pandyas are first mentioned by Megasthenes. He says that kingdom was ruled by a woman. Kingdom was ruled by a woman. Kingdom was ruled by a woman. Right on. One of the characters from Silappadicaram. One of the characters of Silappadicaram. One of the characters of Silappadicaram is Nendunjelian 1. Nendunjelian 1. It is believed, or not it is believed, as per the text, write down, as per the text. As per the text, he died of remorse. He died of remorse because of, he died of remorse because of death of Kovalan, who was innocent. Because of death of Kovalan, who was innocent. I told you this story. Kovalan he gets executed even though he is innocent, and king and queen commit suicide out of remorse, right? So this signifies to ek to capital punishment even for a crime like theft, but because this theft now involves the anklet of queen, the punishment is capital punishment. But also then there is a sense of duty that a false killing leads to death of king and queen. Write down. Nedunjelian 2. Nedunjelian 2. Nedunjelian 2 is considered an important ruler. Is considered an important ruler who defeated Cholas and Cheras. Who defeated Cholas and Cheras. In some inscriptions, it is mentioned that his subordinates patronized Jainism. His subordinates patronized Jainism. His subordinates patronized Jainism. So Buddhism, Jainism is a Mani Mekalai. Dekho, Mani Mekalai is a Buddhist text. Shilappadikaram is a Jain text. Then you have inscriptions also which are mentioning that one of the relative of Nedunjelian II, he give gifts to Jain monks. So it does tell you that not only Vedic religion, not only Hinduism, but also Jainism and Buddhism are also known to the rulers, and rulers are becoming patron of all of these religions. So we will talk about religion, but give the first heading. So we are going to have a detailed discussion, and that is more important rather than जो political development हमने अभी discuss किया है. जो अभी हम discuss करेंगे, that is more important for prelims or mains examination. So give the first heading: economy in the Sangam age. Economy in the Sangam age. Economy in the Sangam age. So the major economic activities हैं, they are agriculture of course, without any doubt, but apart from that trade is very very prosperous. जो state का जो source है, state का source was land revenue, custom duty, but also it was lot of war booty, that you have local lords, local chiefs who are attacking some other chiefs and they are looting some wealth. It may not have been as such authenticated by king, but if, let's say for example, you accept authority of one of the ruler, then you have to share that war booty with the king. So that was also a very important source of revenue. But agriculture, and even in agriculture you find an advanced type of agriculture now, because there is a proper classification of land, that there is a land which is only used for agriculture, there is a land which is only used for animal rearing, there is a land which is used for salt making, things like that. तो आप लिख सकते हो, a five-fold division of land, a five-fold division of land, a five-fold division of land is mentioned in Tolkapiyam. A five-fold division of land is mentioned in Tolkapiyam. Is mentioned in Tolkapiyam. This division was called Tinais. This division was called Tinai and included the following, and included the following included the following Sangam age does include Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas. So there is a question that Sangam age, Chola, Cheras, Pandya, are they contemporary? Yes, they are contemporary. We are talking about a kingdom which existed in this period. So Sangam age, jo 3rd BC, 3rd century BC, 3rd century AD hai. We are talking about these three. There may have been many chiefs, but the three most important chiefs, three most important kingdoms are Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas. And the reason, again I will repeat, the reason we call this Sangam age, because the most important source is Sangam literature, which was basically an assembly of poets which occurred in Madurai. Two of them occurred in Madurai at least, but all three of them were patronized by Pandya rulers. These were first Kurinji, इसमें बस एक लाइन लिख लेना, land of hilly tracts, used for hunting and gathering, land of hilly tracts used for hunting and gathering, land of hilly tracts used for hunting and gathering, Mullai, pastoral land used for animal husbandry, pastoral land used for animal husbandry, Palai, infertile land, Palai, infertile land, Marudam, agricultural land, Marudam, agricultural land, and Neetal, used for fishing and salt making, used for fishing and salt making, used for fishing and salt making. Write down the next point. Agriculture was the main occupation. Agriculture was the main occupation. Main occupation. Cultivation of rice, cotton. Cultivation of rice, cotton, sugarcane. Cultivation of rice, cotton, sugarcane, pepper, turmeric, cardamom, cinnamon, were prevalent. Tanks and dams, write down the next bullet point. Tanks and dams were used for irrigation. Tanks and dams were used for irrigation as the region is devoid of perennial rivers, as the region is devoid of perennial rivers. Perennial river मतलब सालों भर जिसमें पानी हो, throughout the year you get water. Region is devoid of perennial rivers. Region is devoid of perennial rivers. Devoid मतलब नहीं है, perennial rivers नहीं है. devoid of perennial rivers. Absence, basically. Rivers hai, but they are not perennial. Perennial in the sense that in these rivers you do not find water throughout the year. There will be few months where the river layer will be very, very less. So less that it cannot be used for irrigation as such. That is the meaning of perennial river. Write down the next bullet point. Trade both inland and foreign was well established. Trade both inland sorry, both inland and foreign was well established. Many trade related terms such as Vanikam, Chattan, Nigam, Vanikam, Chattan, Nigam are mentioned. Salt merchants were called Umanar. Mobile merchants were called Chattu. Mobile merchant means merchants who roam around from place to place. They do not do their trade at one location, but they are mobile. That they are moving karma traders, some sort of karma traders. So mobile merchants were called Chattu. Write down. The marketplaces were called Avanam. The marketplaces were called Avanam. Write down next point. A flourishing trade with Romans was the most important feature of Sangam economy. Sangam economy. There was a surplus trade. With main export items as spices, perfumes, fine textile, precious stones, black pepper. Black pepper was a coveted item for Romans. It was called Yavan-priya. Black pepper was a coveted item for Romans. It was called Yavan-priya. Main items which were imported main items which were imported were lead, coral, lead, corals, and slave girls. Lead, corals, and slave girls. Around 1st century AD, the discovery of monsoon winds, by the Greek sailor Hippasus, further intensified the trade. And एक last point economy में लिख लेना, apart from land revenue and custom duty, tributes paid by local chiefs, were major sources of income for the state. Major sources of the income for the state. A very important tribute was war booty called arai. Arai. Give the next heading. Sorry, what is not prevalent? Cotton. Of textile जो हमने लिखा था उसका क्या है? Cotton में लिखा भी as a cultivation also, and जो fine textile है muslin clothes, that example of actually prevalence of cotton. Cotton is very much prevalent, so prevalent that it is one of the exported items. जो textile है that is made from cotton. Give the next heading. Society. Simply write down society. Society and religion. Society and religion. Okay, so what type of society we are talking about? Sangam literature is an example of secular literature, different from Vedic literature. Vedic literature is religious literature. Sangam literature is secular literature. Secular in the sense that even though religion is a theme here, but religion is the not most important thing. We are talking about society, we are talking about economy, we are talking about political conflicts, we are talking about moral teachings, right? So these things are equally important along with religious themes. So that is why Sangam literature is not considered a religious literature, but it is considered a secular literature. So Sangam literature clearly mentions that there is a concept called Varna system. So Varna system is known to the society at this point of time, but it is not practiced in the Sangam age. तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि society equal है. Society is very much unequal, but this inequality is not on the basis of Varna classification. It is mainly on the basis of clan classification, which is called Kuti. That there is a concept called Kuti, that society is divided based on Kuti. You have many rich peasants, then you have people who are working for very low wages in the fields. So while rich people are living in baked brick houses, जो बहुत गरीब लोग हैं, the most poor people, they are living in mud houses, in very frankly not very good condition. So society is very much unequal, but this inequality is not because of Varna classification. Even the Varna classification is known but not practiced a lot. So that is the first thing you can write. The concept of Varna system. The concept of Varna system was known in the Sangam age. The concept of Varna system was known in the Sangam age. Was known in the Sangam age. However, it was not practiced. It was not practiced in similar manner. In similar manner. In similar manner as it was in North India. As it was in North India. Social stratification was based on social stratification was based on Kuti ब्रैकेट में लिख लेना similar clans. There was no restriction on interdining among Kuti groups. There was no restriction on interdining among Kuti groups. Now this line has a significance because in Varna system interdining is also not allowed. At one point of time, what was based on economic occupation, it becomes rigid, no social mobility. Forget that, social mobility to baat kijiye, even interdining is not allowed. So, however, in this case, interdining among different Kuti groups, that is very much practiced. So, Varna system is known, but it is not the basis of social stratification. However, it later changes. हम next period जब हम पल्लवा period पढ़ेंगे, we will realize that very much Varna system is integral part of the society. But in Sangam age, it is not an integral part of the society. Write down. Society was very much unequal. Society was very much unequal. Very much unequal. Ruling class was called Arasar. Ruling class was called Arasar. Rich peasants were called Velalas. Rich peasants were called Velalas. The lowest class which did the manual work in farms, the lowest class who did the manual work in the farm, was called Kadaisiyar. Was called Kadaisiyar. Write down the next point. Class of warriors were an important part of society. Important part of the society. Captains of the army were given the title of were given the title of Inadi. Memorial stones were erected. Memorial stones were erected in the honor of those who died fighting. In the honor of those who died fighting. They were called Nadukul or Virukal. Nadukul or Virukal. So very important aspect of megalithic culture. Even right now in Sangam age, it is present. So megalithic was about its unique burial practices. So not exactly the same burial practice, but having stones to respect the warrior class. That is an important feature here. Write down next bullet point. Most of the Sangam poets were male. Most of the Sangam poets were male. However, few of them were women. Few of them were women. Poets belong to all classes. Poets belong to all classes. And kings and poets both were dependent on each other. Both were dependent on each other. Now let me explain this. इस साल यूपीएससी में एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सा एसे आया था. आपने एसे पेपर देखा इस बार का यूपीएससी का? One of the essay was that poets are unsaid lawmakers of the world. By the way, essay जो यूपीएससी के अभी आ रहे हैं बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग आ रहे हैं. They are not coming from well established topics. कि कोई टॉपिक पॉलिटी का है या इकोनॉमी का है या इन्वायरमेंट का है या साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी का है, ऐसे टॉपिक्स अब नहीं आ रहे हैं. टॉपिक्स आर कमिंग ऑन वेरी एब्स्ट्रैक्ट टॉपिक्स. ऐसे एक एब्स्ट्रैक्ट सा टॉपिक होगा, नो मैन क्रॉसेज द रिवर ट्वाइस. इस पे अब लिखो आप 1000 वर्ड्स. और पोइट्स आर अनसेड लॉ मेकर्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, राइट 1000 वर्ड्स ऑन इट. तो सच टाइप ऑफ टॉपिक्स रिक्वायर अ वेरी जनरल रीडिंग. इट डज नॉट, जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल यहाँ पे हिस्ट्री का नॉलेज बहुत यूजफुल होगा. So the moment I read about this topic, the first thing which came to my mind was Sangam poems, Sangam poets. Sangam poets जो है, they played a very important role. They could assassinate the character of a king or kept him on a high pedestal. But at the same time, then poets are also patronized by kings. So kings and poets have a very interesting relationship. In most of the cases, you will find that poets often wrote all in praise of their जो भी किंग जो पैट्रोनाइज कर रहे हैं उनको, all out, everything praiseworthy, whatever is perhaps, let's say for example, some weakness in the character, they were not written in detail or they were in fact not even touched upon. But in Sangam literature you find that poets are very much critical of the rulers also, and such poems played a very important role in characterization of a king. तो king का जो authority है, there are many ways to attain authority. One of the authority is that how poets are representing his character in their poems. Is he a good king? Is he taking care of his subjects? Things like that. And at the same time, poets were also patronized. So there is a very interesting relationship. तो इस टाइप के जो टॉपिक्स होंगे वहां पे हिस्ट्री बहुत यूजफुल होगा आपके लिए. Poets are unsaid lawmakers of the world. There are so many examples throughout the world that how poets played a very important role in developing of politics or society or other aspects of kingdoms, right? So in overall for essay, a very general reading and a in-depth reading is required. तो ये जो पूरा trend चल रहा है, that you have this ready-made material in front of you. All of you, let's say for example, most of you come to me and ask कि खाली notes पढ़ लेते हैं, book नहीं पढ़ते हैं. And I'm always going to suggest you that to read books. That is very important. You have this habit of reading the पर डे समरी एक आता है, दैट हिंदू में जो भी चीज आया है Vision IS has a summary on their website. This institute has a summary on their website. There is a YouTube video on it, right? Use that. I'm not asking you that do not use it, but read newspaper first by yourself. Read that editorial first by yourself. I know that you have just started preparation and lot of things will not make sense to you. Economy का कुछ आ गया, science का कुछ आ गया, हो सकता है नहीं समझ में, but that's fine. In the course of time, it will make some sense to you. So ये जो पूरा trend है, ready-made material engulf करने का, that you feel that everything should be spoon-fed to you. And I know that you have just started your preparation. You do not want to listen to such harsh words, but I am telling you because the sooner somebody tells you, the better it will be for you. So coaching institutes play a very important role, but they will not be responsible for your final selection. And I am a teacher in a coaching institute, I am telling you this. Coaching institute will play a very important role that this syllabus is really, really huge. There is so much literature available. All of that will be occur in a structured manner in a limited time frame. But after that जो revision है, खुद से newspaper पढ़ना, खुद से notes बनाना, questions उस पर attempt करना, answers लिखना, objective questions करना, all of that is your hard work. Nobody is going to do that hard work for you, right? So that is why any type of ready-made material, use it. I'm not saying they are very useful, frankly, but first use primary sources, develop a habit of reading. That let's say, for example, if a book is been recommended to you, in general it is a book on public policy, on economy, polity. Experts मान लो optional के लिए कोई book आपको recommend कर रहा है या GS के लिए कर रहा है, go and read it. Read the editorials in depth. पूरा पढ़ो. हो सकता है चीजें शुरू में समझ में ना आए, बाद में समझ में आएंगी. तो ये क्या होगा कि this will help you in writing habit. तो आपको खाली GS के आंसर्स नहीं लिखने, ऐसे भी लिखना है. इक्वल वेटेज है उसका, राइट? वो भी 250 मार्क्स का है. देयर आर 2 एसेज, 125 मार्क्स, और दोनों में आपको 1000 वर्ड्स लिख के आने हैं, 1000 to 1200 वर्ड्स. तो फॉर दैट यू विल रिक्वायर अ जनरल रीडिंग and overall an expertise on lot of things together. Only then you can attempt topics, such abstract topics. Poets are unsaid lawmakers of the world, right? Give the next heading. Not heading, क्या लिख रहे थे हम? Okay, write down the next point. So there are about 470 poets. जो third संगम है, there are about 470 poets, work of 470 poets. About 30-35 of them are women. That is what I meant, that most of the poets are male, but some of them are female also. And that does tell you that even women have access to education. Not exactly on the same pedestal at male members of the society, but definitely they have access to the education. आप एक लिख लेना next line में. There is mention of sati being practiced in Tamil society. Sati being practiced in Tamil society. It was called Tipayadal. It was called Tipayadal. However, it was not obligatory. It was not obligatory. Write down next point. There were many local deities. Local deities. For example, the worship of God Murugan, the worship of God Murugan, who was also called Subramanya, was popular. Even today it is popular, but now Murugan is called Kartikeya, son of Lord Shiva, right? So even today the worship of Murugan is quite popular. So this goes back to Sangam age. Write down, at this juncture, Brahmans had appeared. At this juncture, Sangam age, in Sangam age, simply write in Sangam age. Forget at this juncture, remove that. Write down, in Sangam age, Brahmans had appeared. In Tamil land. Many Brahmans became great poets. And were rewarded by the kings. Kings also patronized Buddhism and Jainism. So in the course of time, worship of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, that became very popular. That is how you find later rulers, जैसे Cholas and Pallavas, they erected these grand temples, and you have these temples of Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu. So this is about a very important topic, Sangam age, Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, which existed together, fought lot of battles together, and decline almost occurred also together. One of the reason of decline was that decline of trade occurred. This decline of trade mainly was fueled. This is silk, and by the way, this decline is not just in Chola, Cheras, Pandyas, but this decline is also in the northwest frontier. This we talked about decline of Kushanas. Kushanas declined with decline of trade on Silk route. One of the reason this trade declined because Europeans had learned the art of making silk from Chinese. So there are many reasons. There are political developments, but one of the economic development was that Europeans had learned the art of making silk from Chinese, and the silk demand reduced a lot. So this trade route which existed in ancient world, that no longer was very prosperous. With that, Kushana's power declined. Another development happened in Roman Empire, that many invasions occurred to Romans themselves. They were involved in their own warfares. Because of that, trade with India declined. And war, however, did not decline. So you have declining trade, but continuous warfare among yourself. So Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, almost simultaneously they decline. And for a period of, again I will repeat, 400 AD to about 700 AD, or in some cases 800 AD also, you do not find the mention of these kingdoms for few hundred years. But then again by 800, 900, you find Chera kingdom again, Pandya kingdom again, and of course you find Chola kingdom. And the imperial Cholas, they had one of the largest empire, not just in India, but even beyond India. Perhaps the only example where Indian rulers went outside India and occupied foreign territories. That is why they are called imperial Cholas. They had imperialistic ambitions. Anyways, we'll talk about them also. But the next topic, once we conclude the next topic, 80% of ancient history we have completed. Give this heading, Gupta Empire. Yes. Social stratification हर जगह होता है. The question is, you have a very valid question, that can we relate the Kuti based classification with Varna classification? तो सबसे पहली चीज कि सोसाइटी में जो स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन है, जो सोशल स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन है, दिस इज नॉट अ फीचर जस्ट ऑफ इंडियन सोसाइटी बेस्ड ऑन वर्ना. थ्रू आउट द वर्ल्ड यू फाइंड सोशल स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन. उसका बेसिस अलग अलग हो सकता है. बेसिस कैन बी, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम इट विल बी क्लास. जैसे एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लो. इन अर्बन एरियाज वी थिंक देयर इज अ सोसाइटी में, आपको बड़ा एक इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन आपको मिलेगा जब आपको इंडियन सोसाइटी पढ़ाएंगे. पेपर 1 में इंडियन सोसाइटी मेंस का पार्ट है ना, प्रीलिम्स में नहीं है बट मेंस का पार्ट है. सो देयर इज अ वेरी फेमस स्टेटमेंट दैट द इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ कास्ट हैज डिक्लाइंड इन अर्बन एरियाज, बट एट द सेम टाइम यू हैव मेनी अदर बेसिस ऑफ सोशल स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन. वन ऑफ देम दैट इज क्लास. दैट अर्बन एरियाज जो है, देयर आर क्लास डिस्टिंक्शंस इन अर्बन एरियाज. सो सोशल स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन जो है, दैट इज नॉट अ phenomena which only exist in Indian society. Throughout the world, we find such stratification. Basis uska kya hai, that is different, right? So that basis in Indian society is Varna classification, caste classification. Here it is not Varna or caste, but clan-based classification. That some clans, which in course of time became richer, jaise Velalas, these are rich peasants. And then you have Kadaisiyar, which are basically low-waged laborers. So this is a clan-based classification rather than classification based on Varna system. Okay? Okay, that is also something I should highlight it here. Sati practice in Sangam age is not same as how Sati was practiced in later part of ancient India as well as in medieval India. Because in later part of ancient India and medieval India, Sati was obligatory. Women were forced to burn. In ancient Sangam ages, you have some instances where women threw themselves on a pyre, but it was not because somebody forced them. So you find these stories, in stories you find this practice, but this practice is not obligatory as such. So just because the word sati is, again, sati means that after death of husband, a woman is also burnt. In ancient India also, जैसे Gupta period में हम discuss करेंगे that sati start becoming, sati as a practice gets institutionalized and it becomes of course more prevalent in later period of time. And in medieval India also we find this instance. But here, in Sangam age which I am discussing, sati is not obligatory per se. You have some stories where women have thrown themselves on the pyre where husband is burning. Right? So these stories however are glorified. That women who have thrown themselves on their burning husband. So these stories and these women are glorified, but at the same time, this is not an obligatory practice in Sangam age. Any other question from this Sangam age? No, not at all. Mauryan Empire का जो हमने southern territory देखा तो हमने discuss किया था कि it will include the region of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, but not. So Ashokan inscription talks about Dhamma Ghosh, not part of his territory. Ashokan inscription mentions Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, that he has emerged victorious in Dhamma Ghosh, a cultural conquest rather than political conquest. तो जो southern most Ashokan inscription हमको मिलता है वो कर्नाटका आंध्र प्रदेश रीजन में मिलता है, not in तमिलनाडु. So ये जो three kingdoms है चोलास, चेरास, पांड्यास और सत्यपुत्रास, they are not part of Mauryan Empire per se. Okay. Kaviripatnam was, it may have been in some textbook it is written that Kaviripatnam was a capital, but Kaviripatnam was mainly a port. Their capital was Urayur. Any other question? Yes. Not necessarily. Pandyas became the great patron. They organized this. There are the tradition of poetry exists throughout the southern India, especially in Tamil language. And these poems which are by the way orally transmitted, Pandyas were the one who basically got this assembly. But that does not mean that without this assembly there are no poets. Poets are there, but this assembly was patronized by Pandya rulers. System was? We have to assume that we are talking about a patriarchal society, except perhaps जो Megasthenes का जो description है that a woman ruler. Not enough information, but we can say that perhaps society was matriarchal, but at the same time not enough information. Patriarchal का एक और example जो हम use कर सकते हैं कि out of 470 poets, 30-35 are women. Rest of them are men. Any other question? There is a question that how would kings in Sangam age accept the critical writings of poets? This may have been part of, I understand this question, if a poet is critical of the king, then that poet will not be heard of after that, right? So, I understand the question, but maybe it is part of the tradition itself. That it is जैसे अभी ऐसे समझ लो कि although जो critical journalists होते हैं often they are killed, बहुत सारे cases होते हैं कि journalists which are very critical of a particular regime, they are often killed. In many regimes it occurs. In India also it has occurred. But maybe we have to assume here that there is a practice perhaps that such type of critical writing जो है, that in fact can play a very important role, that king's character is assassinated rather than killing of the poets. What was the institution of death rights? That's a very difficult question to answer. Institution of death right जो है, that is something perhaps which you should study in anthropology or sociology, but not in history per se. कि death rights in संगम एज जो है वो exactly कैसे हो रहा है? That's a very difficult question to answer, frankly. Among 470 poets, how much were female poets in third Sangam literature phase? I just mentioned about 30-35. That out of 470 poets, 30-35 जो हैं. Okay. Give the next heading. Difference between? Clan is basically people who are related by same blood relations. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल द रीजन यू बिलोंग टू, आपके आसपास के जो भी लोग हैं, आप थोड़ा सा रिसर्च करोगे तो पता चलेगा, इवन थोड़े दूर भी हैं, कि ये किसी ना किसी तरीके से हमसे रिलेटेड है. समहाउ दे आर रिलेटेड. इंडिया में क्लैन बेस्ड जो है वो तो कास्ट जो है वो क्लैन हो जाता है. बट इन जनरल अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड यू आर गोइंग टू फाइंड दैट देयर आर लॉट ऑफ ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल हु आर रिलेटेड टू ईच अदर. Right? So that is clan. Class is basically based on many criterias. One criteria can be economic criteria. People, even within clan, there can be classification. There are people with resources, rich people, middle class, lower class, things like that. And this can be also social classification. That it does not have to, for example, in India, the class classification jo hai, that is also based on social classification. That you have varnas, higher varnas, lower varnas, mid varnas, things like that. जब हम clan word, so one tribe for example can be said that they belong to one clan. Yes, we can say that. But at the same time, many clans of the same tribe can exist in different location. That is also a possibility. Okay. That's a very good question. That the ideas जो हैं, let's say for example when we say that Brahmins appeared in Sangam age in South India, does that mean that we are talking about, if I can use the word Vedicization or Aryanization of South India? So historians will say that we cannot exactly say that, because even though many of the Vedic ideas became very popular, but at the same time we are talking about emergence of a new type of culture, that they did have their own cultural identity, which was very integral, which was in fact pervaded even before that. And now you have this basically cultural milieu rather than a proper uniformity in culture, what it was in North India and what it will be in South India. So we will not use a statement that we are talking about Aryanization or Vedicization of South India. Even today there are many cultural differences, many similarities also, but many differences also. Any other question? Sorry? Sculpture tradition जो अमरावती स्कूल ऑफ आर्ट है वो हम सतवाहना के लिए सिर्फ यूज करते हैं. We do not find a sculpture tradition in Sangam age. A sculpture tradition जिसको हम अलग से distinguish कर दें. जो sculpture tradition हम सबसे जो popular है in South India, that is from Pallava age and from especially Chola of Imperial Cholas. Imperial Cholas were great patron of sculpture. जो नटराज sculpture है, that is a very good example. That sculpture comes from Imperial Cholas, but not from Sangam age. Sangam age does not have a distinct school of sculpture as such. We can say that Deccan region always has been a conduit of cultural interactions among different group of people. Yes, we can easily say that जो पूरा Deccan region है, Deccan region has been a conduit of cultural interaction among people in north and people in south. Yes, we can easily say that. Give the next heading Gupta Empire. At least I want to start this topic in today's class. Give this heading Gupta Empire. Gupta Empire जो period है, this is called. So again we are now shifting back our focus to North India. Let me show you with the help of a map the territories which I am talking about. So initially, the first ruler of Gupta Empire is Sri Gupta. He may have ruled around 260 AD. The second ruler, he was Ghatotkach. But if I am talking about the word empire, empire basically means we are talking about a much larger territory with involvement of many local rulers. That will start from Chandragupta I. So that mainly included, again, Patliputra became the capital. So this was initially the reason of Chandragupta I, where we can say that empire had started. The empire further expanded by Samudragupta. So this was the reason he directly controlled, but also he led a conquest to the Deccan and to south, and he defeated all of these rulers in his conquest. So even though he did not directly rule them, but all of these rulers accepted the authority of Samudragupta. So I can include this reason also as part of his kingdom. And jahan pe Satvahana rule tha, now you have a dynasty called Vaktak dynasty, but they were allies of Guptas. For majority of duration, they were allies of Gupta. So there is no need of attacking this kingdom. So basically again we are talking about a second political unification of India. And by Chandragupta II, who took the title of Vikramaditya, now that included a significant part of Pakistan also. So northwest frontier jo hai, that was won over by them. So this age is called Golden Age of Ancient India because of development in literature, because of development in science and astronomy, because of development in medicine, and because of the fact that they were the largest issuer of gold coins. So literally golden period. So apart from the fact that they issued gold coins on the largest number, their contribution to literature, science and astronomy and medicine is so immense that this phase is called Golden Age of Ancient India, used by nationalist historians. But then there is a group of historians who highlighted a lot of problems with this period. That let's do a social analysis. What type of society we are talking about? And you come to a realization कि जो वर्ण classification है या जो caste distinction है, that becomes very acute. The position of women further declines in the society. So on that matter, it is not a golden period. So depending upon which school of thought you read, there are nationalist historians who have used the term golden age of, and in fact, even today we can use it. This is a very popular term, golden age of ancient India. But at the same time, you have many historians who will say, because of mainly social decline, that this cannot be considered as such a golden age. But nonetheless, this is a very major phase and perhaps in fact end of ancient India. I can mark it here. One more ruler, I can use Vardhana. Death of Vardhana can mark the end of ancient India. But by the decline of Gupta Empire also, the transition from ancient to early medieval India declines. So once we complete this topic, 80% of ancient India has been completed. After that, I'm going to talk about Harshvardhanas, Pallavas, Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, Palas. But these are not pan-Indian kingdoms. These are regional kingdoms with long-lasting contribution, but not compared to what Guptas contributed to ancient India. We are talking about a soft power of India, which now, which basically now is across this not just subcontinent, but in Central Asia also. ये जो पूरा Indian Ocean है, this is called Ocean of Churn, that whatever is happening in India, and India has become one of those regions where scholars from all over the world are coming and getting education here. Right? And whatever is happening in India, those ideas are now being spread to different part of the world. So India becomes a part of popular imagination in all the parts of the world who know about India, that a country like India exists. So that is why this period is called Golden Age of Ancient India. So before that, let me briefly tell you about sources. Now there are no dearth of sources here, because most of the literature was compiled at this period of time only. So sources हमारे पास बहुत सारे हैं. So give this heading sources. Sources. So the most important source to know about society and economy are Puranas, because most of the Puranas were compiled during this period. तो सबसे पहला तो Puranas ही है, and most important Puranas were compiled, such as Narad Puran, Vishnu Puran, right, Vrashpati Puran. All of these Purans were compiled during this period. तो एक बहुत important source है. Then work of Kalidas, because Kalidas was one of the Nauratnas of Chandragupta II. Works of Kalidas. You have some of the greatest work of Sanskrit drama, such as Meghadutam, Abhigyan Shakuntalam, right, Malvik Agnimitram, Kumar Sambhavam, all of these great works. Kalidas का story खुद में बहुत interesting है. As the myth goes, or as the legend goes, that he was not a learned person. Forget learned. He did not even know how to read and write. And then there was a princess called Vidyotama, and there was a challenge by her that anyone who defeats there was a tradition in ancient India, that tradition of debate and discussion, that you enter into Vad Vibad. And anyone, let's say for example, एक पूरा tradition ये था, that if two people are debating on a particular issue, and if one of them emerges victorious, then the person who has lost, he has to become the follower of the victor. So this tradition was very popular. So Vidyotama had a challenge that anyone who defeats her in discussion, in debate, she's going to marry him. Many Brahmins are defeated by Vidyotama. Because of that, Brahmins are they want to take revenge. Somehow they trick her and the king that Kalidas is a learned person, and Kalidas gets married to Vidyotama. After that, Vidyotama, after her marriage, gets to know, she asks very few words, meaning of very few words, 3 words, Asti, Kashit, Vag, Vishesha, 3 words of Sanskrit. Kalidas does not know any of these words. And because of that, he gets insulted by Vidyotama. He takes that insult on a personal level, and then he goes and does hard work. And based on these 3 words, अभी story अभी और भी interesting है, by the way. अभी और भी interesting है. Based on these 3 words, he writes 3 great poetry, comes back. Vidyotama is ready to accept her, but now he says no. Now you can laugh, right? So then later what happens is that Vidyotama curses him that you are going to be murdered by someone, and that also happens. There is an entire story behind that also. So Kalidas is known for some of the greatest work of Sanskrit literature, which was compiled during Gupta period. So that is a very important source to know about history. There is another work, by the way, which is Kama Sutra, and I do not have to pretend what it is all about, but Kama Sutra is also a very important source to know about history, because it talks about gender relationship, that roles and responsibilities of men and women in the house. So ये जो gender relationship है, that does tell you what type of society we are talking about, right? So there are many works of literature. I will continue this discussion in the next class, and it will take entire one class to talk about Gupta Empire. That will conclude 80% of our ancient history.